Hi, this is Bob Coover from Groove Synthesis, and I'm here to give you an overview of the third wave 24-voice advanced wavetable synthesizer. So, first of all, I'm going to start with the fact that the third wave was designed to recreate what went on with the PPG Wave. PPG Wave was the first available commercial wavetable synthesizer back in the early 80s. You had a 2.2 and a 2.3 were their most famous units, sound the same, and this will do the same type of processing to give you that same feature. This one should ring a bell. This is the famous number 31. And you should hear a particular character that you're getting with that PPG style processing. And what I'm getting at is if I go to something like this, listen to the upper end of these low notes. They had no interpolation, i.e. no smoothing. They had no anti-aliasing filter. They had no anti-imaging filter. So they would step from one waveform to the next, and it would create what's called imaging, especially with the low notes. They also ran at a very high sample rate. That also helped with this. So you would get images of the spectrum down where you could hear. And if you listen to this, you should hear some very nice artifacts going on up at the upper end and ringing. And this will come right back around and you'll hear, yeah, there it's really clear. So there's one of the main reasons why we wanted to recreate what the PPG did. So first and foremost, it is 24-voiced wavetable synthesizer. You've got 3 oscillators. The 3 oscillators can be anything that you want as far as the 4 oscillator types. So first of all, we've got the PPG wavetables. They've always got a P in front of them, and those are the original PPG wavetables plus anything you want to add in. It plays back with that PPG processing chain, including the 240 kilohertz sample playback rate and all of the weirdness and goodness that made it a PPG. You've got the originals that were in the PPG, then we've got a couple of extras here. These are from Prophet VS. Here is a patch from that because it treated the processing chain the same way and had the same imaging. This is the famous Volcanic, which was a preset on there. And I'm going to play it way down. You should hear that same type of effect. So we're probably the only one that can recreate that because of the processing chain. And then we go to the U, which are the user wavetables. These are the wavetables that you can create yourself by putting audio in, and that audio is then analyzed, and we automatically will make a wavetable for you. So somebody will recognize this. That is, of course, a recording of a Fairlight that we've brought in and said, analyze this and make a wavetable out of it. And that's what you're hearing. Now, that is done automatically instead of you having to spend, I don't know, up to 2 hours making your own wavetable. But to make this a little bit more concrete, let me show you what happens if you speak into it or sing into it. So this is me saying the words groove synthesis into it, and this is also a user wavetable. You bring in the audio, you analyze it, and you get something like this out of it.
Groove synthesis.
So you're hearing
Groove synthesis.
the word groove synthesis. If I turn the wavetable off, which has resynthesized this for me, you will be on a single cycle of that wave. But if we look at the wavetable itself, that is the actual words, groove synthesis. And I can move through that now that I've turned the wave envelope off. And that's all of the wave forms that go into making that up. You've got 64 single cycle waveforms in a wavetable, and this recreates it. If I turn the wave envelope, which is walking through the wavetable, back on, you get that result. Then we've got spline interpolated analog waveforms in here that then go into the analog filters out through the back, and you've got all of your bread and butter type of analog sounds. So anything that you want to recreate with 3 oscillators that is in the analog realm, you'll be able to do in here. Sawtooth, square, triangle, sine, and then we've got a super saw, which you would have heard in some of the early 90s Roland items. That's been recreated here. Then we go to the noise. We've got white, pink, red, or you can go white, blue, violet, depending on what you want. So you can create wavetables on here. It will actually make them for you automatically. You can do PPG style waveforms, or the actual PPG waveforms themselves. You can do analog, but now the last thing, there was a add-on to the PPG system called the Waveterm B. It gave you about 3.5 seconds of sample time. We've increased that out to 35 seconds of sample time. So samples are S in front, and you can see here's the life, what you make it loop, et cetera, et cetera. So any of the oscillators can be any of those 4 types. However, you also have 3 wave envelopes on the synthesizer. Those are linear envelopes that allow you to say, what position in the wavetable do I want to be? In other words, what waveform number do I want to play from, and how quickly do I go from one to the other? So it's a linear envelope that allows you to walk through these wavetables. They can also be assigned outside of the waveform selection and go anywhere else you want to go in here. We've got a very extensive mod matrix. So if I play you this patch, this is an example where you've got one wave envelope selected for oscillator 1, and you've got a different one for oscillator 2 and oscillator 3, and you get results like this. So you hear the immediate stepping, you hear something that comes in later, and there it goes. And I'm going to show you here what's going on. If we select the first envelope, it's going all the way from the 0th number in the wavetable up to the 63rd number immediately, and that's the brrr that you're hearing at the beginning. And then if I go to the second one, you see it comes in later. So if we do that again, there's the second one, with the first one that you heard. So you can also imagine you've got a lot of control here with what you're doing, not only with the wave tables, but with the wave envelopes and how you walk through those. You then go to what you would expect if you look at a synthesizer that's easy to use. It's laid out like an analog synthesizer. You go from the oscillators over here to the filters. We've got 2 filter types. We've got a state variable filter that's very much like what you would have on an Oberheim, an SEM type of filter. And then we go into a analog 2140 filter that there's 24 of these in here, and that is what is used in a Prophet 5. You've got saturation for the analog one, as well as your normal cutoff resonance, envelope amount, velocity. Same thing on the state variable. You've also got a switch for bandpass. Then we come to the sequencer. We've got a 4-part multi-timbral sequencer that is pattern-based. So it's drum machine MPC pattern-based. You have 24 patterns, and then you can put those into a song. It does quantization. The quantization can be removed or applied. And yeah, that really adds to what you can do with the 4-part multi-timbral. It will also drive a sequence outboard, or it can be synced to a sequencer coming in. We come over here, we of course have got our arpeggiator, and then last but not least, which I mentioned a little bit, we've got the multi-part section. So you've got basically 4 independent synthesizers in this thing. And as a result of having 4 parts, you can do stuff like this. So you're hearing 4 parts happening at once. If I go to the mode button, you can see you've got a mixer here for those 4 parts. And I'm just gonna take and bring that out. And now I'm gonna bring the bass out. You've got the stereo spread of the chords. Bring this back in. And then bring the bass back in. And you see that you can use 6 voices on each of those parts, even when you're doing multi-timbral sequencing. Now, if you run it in single mode, you've got 24 voices. But even if you run all 4 of the parts at once, you still have 4 independent 6-voice synthesizers that you can either run multi-timbrally, stack, or split. So this is an example. One of our sound designers did the soundtrack for Aeon Flux, and he recreated it here. He did it originally on a Waldorf Wave. He told us, hey, now I can recreate this. And you get sounds like this that are stacks of all 4 parts. And if I turn 2 of these off, you'll hear that part of this is, and then the other half, because he's got them going in stereo. And now if you add them all back together, you get the whole sound. So you can run this multi-timbrally, where you've got 4 independent parts. You can stack if you cannot recreate the sound all by itself with a single patch. You've got the ability to do 4, and you can also split. And you'll hear some of the split arrangements, especially in the samples that we're going to show you. You're hearing a drum loop going on first, and next you're going to hear the bass line kick in. So this is a sample. The bass line kicking in right there is also a multi-sample of a piano. And then last but not least, you're going to get here B3 organ doing the chords. That's actually from one of the Wavetables, and it's also got on it a Leslie speaker emulator. But let's go through this real quick. So here is the sample that you were hearing for the drums. And of course that can be mangled and pitched, and there you go. That's an octave down for the same thing. Now let's go to the second part, and this is the piano that you were hearing. And that piano has actually got multi-samples in it. So if I hit sample here, you're going to see there's the low note. And if I go to the next multi-sample here, you're going to see there's the next one. I'm going to play you the other 2. So those multi-samples, and if you look here on the screen, when you're in the sample selection, it shows you what are my start and end points on the sample, where are my loops, which you're seeing there as the red lines, and what type of loop am I doing. So you've got crossfading, and you can select in here how long you want to make a crossfade if you're going to loop something, and whether it's equal volume or equal power. So linear or sinusoidal crossfades. Those are all available in here in the sampling edit area. You can also select where your assigned note is for a given sample, and you can retune it after the fact in this same area. The samples are all saved as a complete unit with the metadata for the loop points, for the tuning, and for the type of crossfading that you're doing. Again, you've got 35 seconds of this. This acts as a hard drive on your computer, so the third wave shows up there. If you fill up your 35 seconds, just go back, dump it out, and put in a new one. 35 seconds, more than your average drum machine, definitely more than what the PPG originally gave you, but we're not trying to be something like Contact. This is the very cool ability to add sampling in to something that gives you the flexibility of putting a sample on one of the oscillators, or two, or three, or any other combination that you want to do. You can have a sample, you can have a wavetable on the second oscillator, you can have analog on the third, whatever you want. So the sky's the limit. I'm going to play you this same loop for a moment and show you a little bit of what is available to you if you are trying to start to manipulate that sample. So let's go back to here and hit go, and if I turn the cutoff down, you're starting to hear what's going on with the filter. We've got an LFO sync to it. And you've got all of this additional craziness going on that you've got. Undo it, and we're back to normal. So that gives you an example of some of what you can do with sampling. Now, I'm going to show you one other sample here. Got to put the groove in groove synthesis, right? So we've got the very famous aim-in loop. And this multi-sample, I'll show you in a second, but we've got it split. So we've got a synthesizer up there. And what you've got there, oh, there we go. So you've got the ability to manipulate these samples, and this is also a good example of how many multi-samples you can put across at a time. You can do up to 8. So you can do up to 8 multi-samples across for a single patch, and here we've got it. These are sliced. So there you go. You've got 8, and this is a split. We've also got tuned 808 kick, and then up here, we've got a synthesizer. But that gives you a run through real quick of what some of the capabilities are with the sampling option. And again, putting the groove in groove synthesis. Now, coming back to the left, I'm going to show you some of the items we skipped. You've got 4 LFOs at your disposal that are syncable, that have delay built into them with the various shapes. You have a modulation matrix, and this modulation matrix is really extensive. We have numerous sources and over 100 destinations. So you can really tie yourself in a knot if you want to with the sources and the destinations for the modulation. Coming across here, now we go to the envelope section. You've got 4 envelopes at your disposal. One, of course, is going to be your amp envelope, your filter envelope, and then we've got 2 floating envelopes for each patch that you can assign to whatever you want. The wave envelopes that I mentioned earlier, which are linear, those are also assignable. The envelopes down here, the ADSR envelopes, those can be one of 2 types, a modern day exponential, or you can also switch it to duplicate the kind of exponential / linear that you would get on a PPG. I'm going to show you a patch, and I'm going to ask you the rhetorical question, are you hearing effects or are you not hearing effects? So what you should be hearing there is a nice big spread, and we're walking through a wavetable, but if you look down here, there are no effects on the synthesizer right now. So what we're doing is we're taking the same patch, we're moving it to 2 locations, hard panning it left and right, and then just by walking through the wavetable at a slightly different timing between each and some of the other things that we're doing internal, you get this nice big stereo spread, and you are somewhat fooled into thinking that you've got chorusing on, that you've got some kind of reverb on, but it's only what is in here that's actually creating it. All right, last, we've not talked much about the effects at the end. We also have a really good selection of effects. You've got 2 per part and a total of 8 that you can have. I'm gonna just select one of them real quick. So this is a 224 model of a plate reverb, and if I have the mix up, you're hearing the reverb. If I turn this up all the way, you're hearing almost infinite reverb. It will go for several seconds. We've got a concert hall based on the 480L. Then what I want to show you here, we've got an echoplex. So if I play this echoplex, this is a tape delay, and you should hear that it's really not sounding much like the original synthesizer anymore. And as it continues to oscillate around, there you go, you're starting to hear what happens on a real echoplex, which is it just turns into a filtered mess as the tape keeps going by the head over and over and over again. So that's a little bit of selection of the effects. You've got in here a bucket brigade delay. You've got a stereo delay, which is not modeled on anything. You've got the echoplex, which of course is the tape delay. You've got a Dimension D style chorus. You've got a Neutron biphase style phaser. You've got distortion, which is a pedal style distortion, exactly the model of a rat. You've also got a Leslie speaker emulation, including the tube front section. So you've got the tube front section of that, and last but not least, you've got a ring modulator. So those are the effects that are also on board in addition to everything else that we've talked to you about. So we've just shown you the controls that are on the third wave, and I want to go back and emphasize you've almost got knob per function on this synthesizer. So the synthesizer, in spite of the fact it's very deep and it can do a lot of things, you do have a very simple way to use it. Most of these controls are active just by grabbing them and running with them. Here we've got an attack that I'm changing. Here we've got a release that I'm changing. It's getting applied to whatever you're doing. I'm adding resonance, I'm adding saturation to the filter. This is very simple to use. You grab a knob, it does it. So in spite of the fact it's very deep, you're not doing menu diving, you're not finding this hard to use. You grab something, it will be very simple and laid out much like an analog synthesizer would be in the first place. So we've already talked to you about the keyboard. We also have a desktop version of the third wave. It's still 24 voices, 24 analog filters, same number of outputs, same everything. So you're getting the same sound. It's completely compatible with what you're doing on the keyboard, just in a smaller, reduced form factor. And if you're asking yourself, am I going to be doing menu diving on this because you have less controls, we tried to keep that also to a minimum. So for instance, you have 3 oscillators here that are separate. You still have the controls for the oscillators here. You're just hitting a button to go and toggle between those. But you are not doing any more menu diving or any menu diving for that matter that you would do on either one of these. So we have the desktop available for you if you do not want the keyboard, and at a more affordable price, but with all the same features. We've given you a broad overview here of the third wave synthesizer and all of its capabilities, and we invite you to go to the website if you are interested. We've got a newsletter there that you can sign up for, and we will keep you up to date on anything that we do to bring new features in to the third wave, and you will be in the know what we've got going on with the third wave. And with that, I want to thank you for watching.